Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel. Click that notifications button and get a new notification whenever a new video is uploaded. Let's talk boxing. I want to start off talking about the whole issue with Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. I've covered this already on a couple of different occasions, a couple of different videos on this. But this video, I want to talk about what you think Alexander Usyk should do. What should be his tactical play to the potential that he's going to be ducked here. There is a real possibility that it's a duck being set up here from Team Hearn. Like I've said in the past, I've always felt that Anthony Joshua would be willing to fight anybody, but I can't just give him an automatic pass here because he gets the final say. AJ-Hearn is the guy who works for Anthony Joshua. This is according to AJ-Hearn's own admission. Now, Anthony Joshua has spent the last X amount of years telling us that the ultimate goal is undisputed, all the belts. He told us that when Deontay Wilder had the belts and people were asking him about, who was on the horizon, who he wanted to fight, he was saying, I always follow the belts. Deontay Wilder's got the belts. He's the guy I want. The moment Fury beat Deontay Wilder, Fury became his focal point. He was no longer talking about Deontay Wilder. Rightly so, because he was hunting for all the belts, for that undisputed title, to the point where #undisputed started getting put around everywhere, in all the promos, on AJ Boxing, on his own channel and things like that. Undisputed has been the journey, the path. It's what it's all been about. All of a sudden, when he's closer than ever, yes, we all wanted to see that fight occur. Yes, I understand. There are many people out there who feel like Tyson Fury didn't do enough to make the fight happen. And maybe Fury doesn't want Anthony Joshua. Even if you believe that, if Anthony Joshua beats Usyk, the winner of Fury Deontay Wilder has nowhere left to go. Even if you believe they're making excuses not to fight AJ, they have nowhere else to go. If AJ gives up a belt, it gives them somewhere else to go. It gives them the opportunity to say, you know what, I've only got one belt. I'm going to go after Usyk next instead of AJ, so I can win an extra belt and I'll be in a better position at the negotiating table, right? So it gives them an excuse if they're looking for an excuse. By the same token, it also ends the prospect, realistically, of Anthony Joshua becoming undisputed champion anytime soon. So one very basic question that I'm going to ask you guys before we get into the question of Usyk is, if this was Robert Helenius, who was his mandatory, and not Alexander Usyk, you think this fight wouldn't have been signed and sealed already and delivered? Come on, guys. Let's be serious now. There's a delay here because they consider Usyk to be a significant threat, and they may be seeking to gain certain advantages in negotiations to try and minimize that threat. One of the speculative things that people are saying is that AJ-Hearn likes to put rematch clauses in fights for mandatory fighters, put fighters in mandatory positions, which is not the go-to thing. When you're a mandatory fighter, you don't automatically have to sign a rematch clause. So what people are assuming is that AJ-Hearn might be going down that path again and saying, look, if you want this Anthony Joshua payout, you need to sign on the dotted line, make this fight happen, but it'll be a rematch if AJ loses. It gives AJ 2 cracks at the whip. Obviously, there wouldn't be a rematch if Usyk wins the fight. So from a sheer perspective of flipping a coin, AJ would have 2 chances of walking away with the heavyweight title and Usyk just 1. So even if they were, completely even in all aspects, you'd have to say Anthony Joshua would have a 66% chance in terms of just sheer probability, 2 out of 3 chance of winning at least one of the fights, walking away with the title. So many people are saying Usyk blatantly doesn't want that. There are other people that feel that the demands of Usyk are monetary, and many people feel that he's wrong to be making these monetary demands. The lovely Karma Serene, shout out to Karma, she made a comment on one of the videos that I was discussing this on, and we had a bit of a debate. So I'm going to tell you her position on this, then tell you my position, and we'll discuss after that what I think Usyk and what you guys might think Usyk should do. Karma says, I'm a cut off my nose to spite my face type of person. Usyk making all these demands doesn't sit right with my spirit. Usyk may not make the money he's getting in the AJ fight for the rest of his career. He's got no right to be stubborn or demanding. She goes on to say that he was also making unreasonable demands when he was going to fight Joyce, and he was asking for a 93% to 7% split. And she doesn't even think AJ's rate's that high, so she's saying this is a joke of an offer, basically. And what if AJ drops the belts? We can all agree he probably won't. At least I hope you're right there, Karma. But if he goes on to if it goes on to purse bids, he may end up with less than he would have gotten to fight Joe Joyce. So to her, it seems more like dice game, she's saying, than chess. And that was in response to me saying I thought that Usyk was playing a bit of a chess game here. So let me just respond in general for everybody. I've already had this discussion with Karma, of course. But for me personally, the way I see it is that it's not just a question of money, okay? Yet I'm sure there's a massive part of it that's that. But, you know, a fighter, firstly, obviously, as a prize fighter, he has to know his worth. And we saw Dillian Whyte walk away from a potential Anthony Joshua fight, maybe because they were lowballed. And these fighters, they work very, very hard to get into a position where they want to get something that they believe they deserve. So from a sheer monetary perspective, it could be a situation where they just don't think they've been given the right offers. And they're worth more than that. And because Usyk has something that Anthony Joshua wants, a key to the undisputed title, he's basically holding him to ransom potentially and saying, no, you're going to give me the offer I want. Otherwise, kiss goodbye to your dreams. This journey you've been working on for so long, you're not going to get the opportunity. Or give me what I consider to be a fair playing field and a reasonable amount of money. This is how Usyk will see it. Now, in terms of those demands being unreasonable and Joyce being given 7%, look, you'd expect Usyk to have a much higher percentage than Joe Joyce. You're talking about an Olympic gold medalist, undisputed cruiserweight champion. He's a massive name in Europe. In Eastern Europe, he's a superstar. So if you're just talking about sheer percentages here, he's bound to be much higher off than Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce, of course, is a terrific fighter in his own right. He hasn't come with the fanfare in the UK of some other heavyweights that have emerged in the recent past, of course. But he's a terrific fighter for sure. Having said all that, Joe Joyce is worth more than 7%. So what could possibly be the aim for Usyk doing this? Well, they knew that the arbitration case was coming up. So by knowing that the arbitration case was coming up, if they were going to lowball Joe Joyce, they knew he was never going to accept 7%. It results in a delay. They're given a certain amount of time before they have to agree terms before the fight goes to purse bids. That delay would have enabled the outcome of the arbitration case. In which case, had Deontay Wilder lost the arbitration, Usyk could have gone back and said, okay, forget 7%, I'll give you 25%, I'll give you 20%. Straight away, the conditions change and the negotiation platform changes and the fight happens. By giving such a lowball offer, it enabled the delay, which enabled him to be in this position. So to me, that's why I think it was a chess game. I don't think he was necessarily being greedy and wanting 93%. I just think that this was his method of delaying the fight occurring. Now, what should Alexander Usyk do? Because AJ-Hearn, who no longer represents Usyk, of course, their contract deal came to an end. AJ-Hearn has hinted that if Usyk does not accept his offer, they will not go to purse bids. And they will simply vacate. Now, the reason that would be a straight up duck, like I said, is because had this been somebody like Robert Helenius or somebody like that, there's no way they would have given up this journey that they've worked so hard on over the last few years. Hashtag undisputed everywhere and so on and so forth. Just to give up the belt. They would have said, yeah, let's batter him. They consider Usyk to be a threat. But there is the possibility that because he is a threat, they do drop the belt. Because ultimately, being called a ducker, so to speak, and not actually losing to Usyk and remaining a superstar name, because let's face it, Anthony, it will only be many hardcore fans that will start to call AJ a ducker for this or saying he ducked Usyk. Because the average casual fan, and there are many that are Anthony Joshua fans, they cross the other sports to support Anthony Joshua, right? He's a superstar that transcends boxing in the UK. Those sorts of fans aren't going to turn against him for not fighting Alexander Usyk, right? So they might look at this and say, you know what, from a sheer PR perspective, the damage will be limited and the risk of losing to Usyk is not worth taking on to avoid that PR damage. Now, as hardcore boxing fans, we have to call him out on this. And we have to say, hold on a minute. Anthony, you've always said, Hearn's always said, you're his boss. Do you want to be undisputed or not? If that is your ultimate aim, get Usyk out the way. There's nowhere else for the other two to run. That fight would have to happen next. Otherwise, they're the duckers and you win the PR war. So from that perspective, you would think that Usyk would want to put verbal pressure on Anthony Joshua. That would be the first step. Start posting memes of a duck with Anthony Joshua's face pasted onto it. Stuff like that. Become the bad guy. Become the villain like Apollo Creed in Rocky, where you're mocking him everywhere. Do that. Let the world know that he's scared to fight you. Play on that. But what do you do in terms of the negotiations? Do you sign a rematch clause? Well, a lot of people are saying, well, if he believes he's going to win, what difference it make? Well, it makes a massive difference, because it's different to have to beat someone twice than it is to beat them once. And additionally, if you do take the belt and walk away, you are then in a much stronger position, financially speaking, to negotiate a rematch. So even if he wanted to negotiate a rematch afterwards, when he's taken AJ's belt, for argument's sake, and then he says, I'm not fighting you, well, now AJ has to go back with a big offer to entice him in. So from a monetary perspective and a risk factor, it's not worth him signing for a rematch. But then he does face the possibility of fighting a very, very dangerous fighter in Joyce, a world-class, top heavyweight who offers some serious physical obstacles to overcome for much less money. And even if you win and become the champ, your aim, because Usyk's aim has also been, as he said post-Chisora, is not just to, and I quote, not just heavyweight champion, undisputed heavyweight champion. Now, you could then start doing all the chasing, but again, you're going to be further away than before. So a lot of people will say, just take the low offer. Take the low offer, Usyk. You know, call his bluff. If he actually wants to, I don't know, he wants to lowball you. So let's say it's financial rather than a rematch clause. And you take that offer and they don't want to fight you, it puts them in a position where then they might find another excuse to walk away. In which case, again, it becomes evident it's a straight up duck. But the biggest obstacle is probably that rematch clause. Maybe Usyk can sign a 2-fight deal where he says, whatever happens, win, lose or draw, I want a second fight therefore. Would AJ agree to that? I don't know. So let me know what you think. What should Usyk do in regards to what is occurring here with AJ-Hearn and Anthony Joshua? I think as hardcore fight fans, regardless of who your guy is, if it's Anthony Joshua, whoever it might be, if you want to see the best fight the best, we have to place pressure on AJ-Hearn and AJ to make this fight happen. And like I said, I don't believe Anthony Joshua is scared of anybody. But we have to pressure him to continue to think like that athlete that wants to fight everyone, regardless of the risks involved. Because that's who Anthony Joshua has always been. And if we want to see the biggest fights in the sport, as fans, we have to give up fighter affiliations and put pressure on guys when we believe that something isn't quite right. And I know a lot of you out there are going to say, well, you know, he wants the undisputed, but clearly the others don't want the undisputed. Fury doesn't want it. Look, he had the opportunity and look what they did. They played him. They did all this, that. Deontay Wilder, he played him. Okay, but it would leave them nowhere else to go. It makes no sense to give up this belt now. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you think. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.